Testing, testing. JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. August 13th, 2024. 32 minutes to open. Gonna be really quick here. Talk about the markets, PPI. We have CPI tomorrow, retail sales after earnings. We had Home Depot. We also some news. Brian Nickel from CMG went over to Starbucks. I'll talk about that and go from there. But take a look. Futures are rallying this morning. We had a cooler than expected PPI data. NASDAQ futures are up about a percent. You have S&P futures about 0.6%. Even the small caps are higher. Hopefully this holds. There's no reversal. Sometimes I don't like gaps to the upside at the open. They always seem to be sold off. So hopefully that won't be the case here today, and we can start working to at least some chop here before we get to 540 on the SPY. 535 key spot yesterday was like oil and vinegar, right? It seemed once we got up to that, we dropped $2 in a matter of 10 minutes or so when it hit that yesterday. Hopefully that holds if we do get some weakness and go from there. But good numbers there on the PPI. The concern would be that it was maybe a little too cool, right? You don't want it too cool. Then you're going to have it was just last week when people were talking about it. We need to get an emergency rate cut from the Fed because the economy is slowing down faster than expected. We're going to be pulled into a recession, and then we have the jobless claims came out last week that came in better than expected, and the jobless claims this Thursday are going to be pretty important as well. And also on the flip side here, the Nikkei has recouped all the losses from its Black Monday last week, closed up another 3.5% yesterday. And then the UK, which was the first one of the cycle to start cutting rates, they actually had a stronger than expected employment number. So tough to pull these data points together, but everybody thought that was ready to start of a big correction in bear market, and we shook it off. So some things I want to see. The IWM over 207 today would be nice. Want to see the small cap start to outperform again. And then that VIX, which is stubborn. I was saying yesterday in the chat room, that 20 handle, it just couldn't seem to get under. It was under it for a little bit, and also we had that reversal from the 535 area on the SPY. Maybe today's today, but then we get down to the 18s, and then we can start getting to normal values, 15 and under. So those will be some of the scenarios I hope play out, and a lot of that's going to come down to what the CPI data comes out tomorrow. In line, I don't even want to see cooler than expected, because then people, again, they're going to start saying, wow, that means the economy slowing down because folks aren't willing to pay higher prices, so there's their purchase or whatever. So rants for other days, don't have too much time here. So let me talk about some of the names, and first I'll talk about Dell. Great move yesterday. It almost shook me at the open, dropped from 92. I think it hit 91 or so. And I was sitting there watching, but then you could see NVIDIA was strong and Supermicro was strong, and then Dell just followed suit. Next thing you know, it started to rally. I think it was up near 5% at times yesterday. Tested the 97s, 97.90 before pulling back, closing at 95.27. Locked some of my calls in for 100% and a little over 300%. Held the rest into today. It's trading here at 99. I thought 101 would be the first kind of short-term target, and then 104.50, 104.75, which is the 200-day moving average, if you can get that towards the end of the week. So I might look to lock a few more in at the open and then use some of that to get probably some spec calls, maybe some 105s, just in case there is some overshoot. But just a nice bounce here. It's trading right at 99 here in the pre-market. Also, Barclays this morning upgraded the stock from underweight to equal weight, but they kept their $97 price target. I don't think the price target's as meaningful as an upgrade. A lot of times you see stocks move more on an upgrade than the actual price target. When you just see a price target change, that usually doesn't move the stock as much as you see when you see an actual rating change, when they go from underweight to equal weight or equal weight to overweight. So I think that'll bode well, and especially if markets are holding the ground here, I think that's going to do well for Dell. Clear Secure, I was looking for some calls at the end of the day, was holding 26. It's not the fastest mover. I didn't want to hold too much risk into the PPI read this morning. I'll be watching again today. I put it on FinTwit yesterday, looking for probably the September 27s, 28s, and maybe some 30s, depending on what it does. If it holds its ground here at the open and holds over 26, that's Clear Secure. VKTX, 3 sessions to the upside. I talked about the short interest yesterday. The new update from the NASDAQ came out. The settlement date was July 31st. So between July 14th or what have you to July 31st, there was over 1.6 or 1.7 million shares sold short, which is nearly $100 million of shares over the course of those 2 weeks were sold short. So it's nearly $1 billion of shares that people are holding, betting on VKTX going down, right? Just pretty remarkable. considering the possible catalysts. And right now, there's not much in the way of the catalyst for VKTX in regards to data, at least anything short term. But there's always that the specter of some M&A or what have you. So I think LLY's earnings certainly put a kick in that space. I think it bodes well for VKTX. I think that heads higher in the coming days. I put on the watch list. I think 70 is the big spot. That'll be, we came up to into the right up to 70 about 2 or 3 times after its earnings when they announced that the FDA approved them to go straight to phase 3. So I think that's the big spot there, is if you can get over that 70 handle. So hopefully that gets there in the coming days. And then I think that'll start a squeeze. And then maybe 80, 85, 90 comes quick. That's that. ENVX, not going to talk too much about that. It's over 10 here in the pre-market, but I think some of it has to do with the overall market going up. Was put on a watch list. The premiums haven't really gone up as much as I would have thought, considering it dropped, what was it, 12% on Friday, another 6% yesterday. So depending on what it does here, I don't want to be caught where I lose all the premium. So I may look to close position and revisit. It seems like there's folks, and there's a huge contingent of shorts. So I think on both sides, people using the option market to protect their positions. And if they're long and they've been long a while, they'll probably continue to sell calls or whatever they're or sell naked puts, whatever they're going to do to raise cash and offset losses and protect themselves and then reinvest. So I think that's some of the reason why the premiums are elevated on the name, because of all the option action. So what happens, it makes, when the premiums are high, the risk reward on up and down for the options not as good, right? The September 9s, I thought they'd be up a couple 100%. That's not, hasn't been the case, but we'll see. I think it heads to $8. If it can't hold $10 today, I think it heads to $8. That's ENVX. And now into CMG. So CMG is a name, and I've talked about it quite a bit, but I haven't traded it in quite some time. I used to trade it a lot pre-split. Back in the day, I think I had 300 puts, and then it was the afternoon. It might have been a Friday, and all of a sudden they announced, and I didn't buy the puts on a Friday, maybe I bought on Wednesday, and all of a sudden there were reports that there's an E-collide breakout at CMG, and you don't know the news came out just yet. You just see the stock tumbled, and I think it went from 300 to like 220 that day. I had like the 280 puts, and I sold out on the way down for some massive profits, right? And it wasn't like I was so bullish CMG, but then after that E-collide breakout, their business suffered. You start looking at their fundamentals. The company using cash to do buybacks. They're opening all these locations, share repurchases, and they were running out of cash. So I did a bear piece. I was getting puts on them. And then finally, this Brian Nickel guy came from Yum Brands. He was the CEO of Yum. I don't know if he came exactly from Yum or he had left Yum and then when they took him out of retirement, whatever it was. And then from there on, he was able to reinvent the business. So many things they've done, and they were very quick in adapting to the digital side, because back then, nobody was doing, you pick up your orders with you order it online and do the pickup on with your app. And back when I used to go to Chipotle and they first started to roll out, you would have to wait online to get your order if you order online. Then they finally came up with the box where you just put your hand, grab your order with your name on it. But anyway, so needless to say, and when he was at Yum Brands, they had one of the worst E-collide breakouts. People died. I don't know if it was Taco Bell's, and that was a long time ago. And he was the one who was able to reverse the trend and the brand and bring them back to relevance. So in a nutshell, now you take a look at what's going on. CMG is down on the news, which is not surprising. And then you take a look at Starbucks, it is soaring, right? So I mean, $87. It's I don't even know what the I could type it up, but over what was a 15% move just because of a new leader, which is on one hand you think is remarkable, but on the other hand, it just shows how important it is to have strong leadership and how confident they are that Starbucks is going to return to a nice growth story. But on the flip, I'm not trading Starbucks, but I may look at Chipotle because I think their business is in great shape. I don't think this changes much in the way of what's going on. And I think there's an opportunity, especially if it trades at 50 or 51. I might look for some spec calls to play for a move into the 53, 54, 55 handle in the coming weeks. I think that's it. Oh, last but not least, so retail sales came out this morning. You had Home Depot. Did I already talk about Home Depot? They had a slight, they had a nice quarter, but then their guidance is a little mixed. They actually upped their revenue guidance, but it wasn't what people look at the same store sales. So there's going to be, they guided down, I think, a negative 1 to 3% sales comp for their same store sales. So meaning their core business, so same store sales is typically locations open more than a year. That's going to decline. And then I guess they're doing more location openings, which is going to help their revenue growth in general. So they raised their revenue guidance but lowered their EPS guidance. So it's kind of like a mixed bag. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't know that a lot of people are expecting too much out of some of these retail earnings. So I'm not saying that bodes well for Home Depot, but we'll have to see what Walmart does, and then we'll have to see how the retail sales number comes out on Thursday. I talked about it on the rant yesterday afternoon. Visa, MasterCard are two names that I'm looking as possible longer term hedge names, right? Not only because I think the payment sector as a whole is going to get disrupted, but if the consumer does show signs of weakness, transactions go down. If transactions go down, revenues and profits go down for Visa and MasterCard. So I think there's a lot of different moving pieces that might come together to cause those names to be decent put opportunities. But don't get me wrong, I've been talking about Visa, MasterCard as possible put plays for quite some time. Sometimes they worked out when I've been in, sometimes they haven't. But at one point, at some time, I think there'll be an opportunity to play it for some serious downside. So that's my rant, folks. Oh, and I have Baidu up here. Bob is going to report earnings before the open Thursday. At some point, China markets, you got to think are going to find some footing. So don't be surprised if I add some spec calls into Friday for Baidu. And then they report earnings. I think they report it next week. Or is it the 28th? I have to go look. I think maybe it's the 21st, a week from tomorrow. So don't be surprised if I add some calls there as well as Baidu, because you have to think that their quarter is going to be, a lot of it's going to be wrapped around AI and the robo-taxi and all that fun stuff. And I mean, it's going to be skewed bullish, just how bullish it's going to be. So that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.